Yeah, we only have.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم اللهم صل وسلم وبارك على سيدنا ومولانا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم سبحانك اللهم لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم وعنده مفاتح الغيب لا يعلمها إلا هو ويعلم ما في البر والبحر وما تسقط من ورقة إلا يعلمها ولا حبة في ظلمات الأرض ولا رطب ولا يابس إلا في كتاب مبين. Today, inshallah, in this lecture, we're going to talk about the Battle of Tabuk, and this was the last battle of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and this took place in the month of Rajab of the 9th year of the Hijrah. So we're very, very much at the end, towards the end of our story. We will remember a couple lectures ago that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam had sent an ambassador to the Romans / Byzantines, and remember, the Byzantines are the Roman. The Byzantine Empire is simply the Eastern Roman Empire, because by this time the Western Roman Empire had ceased to exist. And the only Roman Empire that was still in existence during this time was the Eastern Roman Empire, or the Byzantine Empire. The Prophet ﷺ had sent Al-Harith ibn Umayr al-Azdi as an ambassador, and he was killed by Shurahbil ibn Amr al-Ghassani. So the Ghassanids were a Christian Arab people in the north, in the Levant area, that were the proxies of the Romans. So they are part of the empire, and they are the ones that are in charge of this region. So this ambassador was killed, and as it was then, now, so it was then, that this is obviously, it's considered an act of war and something that is not acceptable. And then the Prophet ﷺ had always been thinking about this issue, how to deal with it. And because of that, there was this subtle feeling amongst the people of Medina that at any time the Ghassanids might come and attack. And to give us an indication of how much a concern this was, around this time, right before the Battle of Tabuk, the Prophet ﷺ had gone into a seclusion and had stayed away from his wives, and there was a rumor that spread that the Prophet ﷺ had divorced his wives. So Sayyidina Umar radiallahu anhu, he had a friend amongst the companions of Medina. They used to always exchange information, catch up on if one was missing or one was gone and traveling, the other would tell them what was going on. So this guy comes to Sayyidina Umar and he said, "Did you hear?" And Sayyidina Umar said, "Oh my God, are the Ghassanids going to attack us?" So there was this thing that was common. It was a huge concern that this was an act of war at any time this was imminent. He said, no, not that. There's a rumor that the Prophet ﷺ had divorced his wife. So this hadith, this story, indicates for us how concerned the companions of Medina were that an attack was imminent. So even though we've been talking about the conquest of Mecca and Quraysh and all of that, there were other concerns. The Roman Empire in the north, which was a much, much larger force, of course, than any of the battles that we have been talking up until now. At the same time, during this year 8, year 9 that we've been talking about, the hypocrites of Medina have also been very busy. They've been so busy that they built their own mosque. And this mosque is called the Mosque of Dirar. And it's mentioned in the Quran because at the end of what we're going to say today, the Prophet ﷺ actually burned the mosque down. And this is a really important part of our story of how the Prophet ﷺ dealt with the hypocrites. Now remember, the hypocrites are people that publicly claim they were Muslim. They would come to the mosque, they would pray and all of that, and they do all the things that Muslims do, but secretly they disbelieved. And many of them colluded with the enemies, plural, and tried to bring the downfall of the government or the state of Medina, tried to bring the downfall of the Prophet ﷺ himself, and were responsible for several assassination attempts. To put it short, not a good group of people. But yet, because they publicly affirmed their Islam, and because our Sharia is built on what is public and transparent, the Prophet ﷺ respected that part of their claim and sought no harm towards them, but rather sought just to protect himself. And when the companion said, "Well, why don't you tell us who these people are? We'll take care of them," he said, "In the future, they will say that Muhammad has killed his companions." So he was concerned, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, about the reputational risk that would have happened if he had taken action against these hypocrites. So they built their own mosque. Why is this significant? Well, it's in the Quran, so when you read those verses, it's nice to know what's going on. But why is it significant for us? Because one of the patterns of fringe groups is they will just set up their own thing. So they don't like your mosque, they'll go set up their own mosque. They don't like your project, they'll go set up another project. And this is something that is very, very common, especially amongst Muslims in the Western world, Western Europe, North America. We have many, many competing groups that are essentially trying to do the same thing. And this should be a red flag for us. Why are we not working together to solve these problems that are common to us? And it's something, not that we point the finger at any group or anything, but it's something for us to be cognizant of. That the way of Islam is to work with the group, with all of its pains and all of its difficulties, is to work out our problems as a group, as a community. Not that I don't like this, so I'm going to go form my own mosque across the street. That's exactly what they did. They formed another mosque, basically to compete with the mosque of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. There were some olive traders who were coming back from the Levant. As we know, the Levant is very rich with olive trees. And they had informed the Prophet ﷺ that Heraclius had, using the Ghassanids, has amassed an army of 40,000 people to attack Medina. So now the fear is now becoming a reality. At the same time, Medina had just gotten over a famine. There was a shortage of food, shortage of crops. Things started to turn. People's farms and trees started to bear fruit. So there was, this feeling that maybe the people of Medina don't want to go out and fight because they, finally things have gotten better, so they want to stay and harvest everything. But the Prophet ﷺ, his strategic thinking was that we are not going to wait for them to come to us. We are going to go and attack them. Now remember, the Prophet ﷺ, at one point in the Sirah, he made this decision after the Battle of the Ditch. He made the decision that we are going to take the fight to them, even though they were defensive fights, but we are going to take the fight to them to preempt the attack of our homeland, but also for the psychology behind it. Imagine being in Arabia at this time and hearing that the Prophet ﷺ puts together this force and marches forth. It's like David fighting Goliath. He's going to go fight the beast. This huge, the Roman Empire at this time was the largest contiguous political, unit in the world. The largest army, professional army. And it lasts, the Roman Empire, it lasts until the fall of Constantinople to the Ottomans. So a huge history. So the Prophet ﷺ was like, no, I'm going to encourage the people of Medina. We're going to take the fight to them. So the Prophet ﷺ, he gets up in the mosque and he calls people to jihad, and he's encouraging people, he's motivating people, and the response was overwhelming. The companions came. The companions came with all their wealth. And in this episode, we have some of the most moving stories. For example, Sayyidina Uthman, radiallahu anhu, he donated 900 camels. And if you look at the price of a camel, you'll get the sense of how much that is. If the expiation for involuntary manslaughter is 100 camels, which is itself a huge amount of money in today's dollars, you can imagine what nearly 1,000 camels, what that would have cost. And he prepared this army. So they're pouring all of their resources and their wealth literally in the lap of the Prophet ﷺ to put together the force that will go and meet the Romans. And they put together 30,000 people. This is the largest army to date from the time we talked about the Sirah of the Prophet ﷺ. So this is the biggest military expedition, and it was the last of the Prophet ﷺ. However, even though there was this outpouring of resources, not every one of the 30,000 troops was armed, and not all of them had a riding animal. And that's why it's called the Jaysh al-Usra, the army of limited resources in the Sirah. Because they were, like a ragtime group of people. They weren't a professional army like the Romans. So they didn't all have weapons. Despite all of it, they put everything that they could find. But despite that, they still were not that equipped. So even though numerically, 40,000 against 30,000. We're getting there. We have, are very under armed with weapons, resources, food, supplies, etc. The Prophet ﷺ marches with them himself north to meet the enemy. As they are passing north, they pass by this area of Al-Hijr, which is where the people of Thamud lived. So the Prophet ﷺ, when he realized he was in this area, and he covered almost like a hood over his eyes, and he said, I don't want to see. And he said, let's just quickly pass this area. We will not stop. We will not water our horses here. We will not water our camels. We will not drink from here, because this is a place in which Allah's punishment has fallen. And they pass quickly, and they arrive at Tabuk, the name of the battle, the area. And the Prophet ﷺ, some people went ahead and he said, if you get there, don't drink from the water until I get there first. And of course, two of the companions, they drink from the water. So the Prophet ﷺ tells them, you didn't listen to me. But the water was limited. The water was limited. So the Prophet ﷺ, he bends and he washes his face, he washes his hands, he drinks from the water, and then the water increases. And this is one of the miracles of the Prophet ﷺ. And one of the ulama, the ulama, they like to rhyme these things, so we remember. So he says, وَأَفْضُلُ الْمِيَاهِ مَاءِ قَدْ نَبَعَ. The best of waters is the water that came out مِنْ بَيْنَ أَصَابِعِ النَّبِيِّ الْمُتَّبَعِ, that came out of the blessed fingers of the Prophet ﷺ. So if somebody asks, what is the order of water in Islam? We say the best water is the water that came from the fingers of the Prophet ﷺ. And then Zamzam, and then Kawthar, and because the person that wrote this poem is Egyptian, he says, and then the Nile, and then all of the other rivers. So you can take that last part with a grain of salt. But we know that the best water on earth that ever you could drink is the water that came from the blessed fingers of the Prophet ﷺ. And which is why when we ask Allah in our dua, we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, may we drink from the blessed hands of the Prophet ﷺ on Yawm al-Qiyamah, a sip of water after which we will never be thirsty or have any anxiety again, inshallah. So this was one of the miracles of the Prophet. And this, by the way, happened several times. It's not just in this story of Tabuk and other battles and other situations. The food increases, the water increases with the blessings and the barakah of the Prophet ﷺ. After they all drink, the Prophet ﷺ, he gets everybody excited. He fires them up. He's getting everybody encouraged. This is like the epic battle. This was, if we were looking at this from a cinematic point of view, this is the big thing. This is the big battle. We've taken care of Quraysh. Mecca has fallen. The people in Najd have stopped. Some of the Jewish tribes that were against the Prophet ﷺ have been dispersed. The only thing that's left is now this menace, but it's colossal. It's not just the Ghassanids, right? It's the entire Roman Empire. It's a massive, massive, endeavor. So the Prophet ﷺ, he gets everybody excited, and then the enemy, they get wind. They start to learn of what's happened, and then they just crumble. So the Ghassanids, they used all of these other, the Ghassanids themselves are a proxy of the Romans, but the Ghassanids themselves found other northern Arab tribes to rally them in their army. And when those other tribes heard what was happening, they came and they pledged their allegiance to the Prophet ﷺ. So it's like they surrendered. So in this battle, there was no fighting. That's how the battle ends. And this is one of the miracles of the Prophet ﷺ. When he says, one of the things I have been given, there's a hadith in which he talks about the unique things he's been given. One of the things that he has been given is nusirtu bil-ru'b. I have been given victory by fear. Now, some Muslims, when they read that, they think that means the Muslim is supposed to be aggressive and always frowning and make people scared of him. But that's not what the hadith means. The hadith means that the Prophet ﷺ won most of his battles just like this. There was no bloodshed. Because he was a rahmah, because he was a mercy to mankind. And because he was a mercy to mankind, even his victories were victories through mercy. There was no fighting. And this is why he decided, I'm going to go meet them. What happens when somebody bullies you, and then you punch the bully? Then the bully cowers, and then everyone starts saying, oh, this guy is tough. Right? So the Prophet ﷺ, throughout the Sirah, he's outnumbered, he's outgunned, out-resourced, all of these things. but he takes the fight to them. He's not scared. He's being attacked for just what he believes in. And so he takes the fight to them, and Allah says in the Quran, وَتَحْسَبُهُمْ جَمِيعًا وَقُلُوبُهُمْ شَتَّى. You think the enemy are united, but really their hearts are scattered. And this is what happens. The Arab tribes, they see this force, that the quality of the 30,000 far outweighs the quality of those 40,000, because these 30,000, they are one unit, fighting for one cause, one nation, under one leader, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. So they scatter. So they come over, and all of these tribes, they start giving their bay'ah, their allegiance. And then the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he starts to return to Mecca. This whole excursion, this whole military episode took about 50 days. So the bulk of it was the traveling. He spent about 20 days, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, in Tabuk with the Sahaba. And this was the last of the Prophet's battles, alayhi sallam. He returns to Medina in the month of Rajab, in the 9th year of the Hijrah. On the way back, the hypocrites, they tried to assassinate the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. And Hudayfa ibn al-Yamani radiallahu anhu, who is the, for lack of a better word, the head of the Prophet's intelligence unit, because the Prophet ﷺ divulged to Hudayfa all of the names of the hypocrites. After the Prophet ﷺ passed, the Sahaba said, when somebody dies in Medina, we would see, did Hudayfa, is he going to the janazah prayer or not? If Hudayfa didn't go to the janazah prayer, they knew that this person was a hypocrite, so they let him be. They just buried the body and that was it. So he never divulged the Prophet's secret, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So Hudayfa is protecting the Prophet, alayhi wasallam. On the way back, he's fighting off 10 people. 10 people try to assassinate the Prophet, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And this is why, when they return to Medina, later, the mosque of Dirar is burnt down. Because the mosque of Dirar becomes a physical fifth column. It's like the anti-mosque in Medina. It's where they're congregating, where they're plotting. The Prophet doesn't have to coexist with that. He doesn't have to arrest the hypocrites or call them out, but he said, this mosque, that's not a mosque. The mosque is for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's not for plotting assassinations and all of that. After they come back, remember I said a few moments ago that there was a famine, and the famine was over and things were looking good. So there's this interesting story in which 3 Sahaba didn't go and fight. They are referred to in the Quran as al-ladina khulifu, the people that stayed back. Ka'b ibn Malik, Mirara ibn Rabi'a, and Hilal ibn Umayyah. Some people couldn't go because they didn't have enough resources, and the Prophet ﷺ didn't have anything to bring them with. And the Quran says they cried because they didn't have enough resources and wealth to go. Some people, like these 3, they could have gone, but they were like, yeah, I'll go out tomorrow, I'll catch them, let me just take care of the trees and the dates, and I'll take care of them now. And one day led to 2 days, led to a week, and then they ended up not going. So when they came back, when the Prophet ﷺ came back, he iced these people out for 40 days. He would not speak to them at all. They would come and they would apologize to the Prophet ﷺ for not going. He did not say anything to them. And when the Sahaba saw that the Prophet ﷺ did not talk to them, they also did not talk to these 3 people. Can you imagine that, for over a month, for 40 days, no one is talking to you? And this is, you're humiliated, you're embarrassed. ضاقت عليهم الأرض بما رحبت. The Quran says the earth is going to swallow them. The stress and the anxiety that they felt, until finally Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reveals, and this is verse 118 of Surah At-Tawbah, Allah ta'ala reveals the forgiveness, and then the Prophet hugs them and he forgives them. And this story also takes place during the battle of Tabuk. The Sahaba were human. They were human, and some of them made mistakes, and through these mistakes and this revelation, Allah Ta'ala teaches us this lesson, and the Prophet ﷺ forgives them. What is the aftermath of this battle of Tabuk, which is really like not a battle, but I mean, what is the aftermath? There is no force in Arabia now other than Islam. From that time until our time, there's nothing. There's no competition, there's no threat, there's not even another religion, nothing. It's over. We won. The Prophet ﷺ won. Islam is established, the state is established, and from this, all of our history comes, everything that follows. So this is a tremendous, if you look at the arc of the story, where we were, in the beginning with all the persecution and always outnumbered and outgunned and this and that, and look at where we have arrived. What happens at the end of this year, because this is Rajab, so what are some of the major events that happen at the end of this year? The Najashi passes away in Abyssinia, and the Prophet ﷺ prays the absent funeral prayer, Salatul Janazah al-Ghaib, on him. So technically the Najashi is not a companion, he's a tabi'i, because he never saw the Prophet ﷺ. The Prophet's daughter, Lady Kulthum alayhi salam, she passes away. She was the wife of Sayyidina Uthman. The leader of the hypocrites, Abdullah ibn Ubay ibn Salul, he dies, and that's a major, a major shaking of the force of the hypocrites. Remember, he was going to be crowned the king of Medina before the Prophet ﷺ came with the Hijrah, and then the destruction of the mosque of Dirar. Towards the end of this year, Sayyidina Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu, he goes on Hajj. He takes a group of them. The Prophet ﷺ will not go until the following year. Sayyidina Abu Bakr goes, and then the Prophet ﷺ sends Imam Ali after him with instructions that there is no more polytheism anymore. Now it's over. So in the Hajj, in the performance of Hajj, they give these instructions that there is no more polytheism, these idols, now we're not going to do that anymore. And this is really the end of the polytheistic belief in Arabia. Because all of this was still unfolding. Mecca had just been conquered, the people had just come into Islam, these things sort of existed, little pockets here and there, but now no more. And then next lecture, inshallah, we're going to talk about the other big event that happens in the 9th year, which is all of the delegations that come and pledge their allegiance to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Wallahu ta'ala a'la wa a'lam. Any questions?
I have two questions. The first one is this the second encounter with the Romans?
Yeah, Mu'tah was the first, and now Tabuk. During the life of the Prophet ﷺ. But after the Prophet ﷺ, there are more encounters with the Romans. A lot more. All the way up until when the Ottomans captured Constantinople.
And then the second one, doesn't have anything to do with this topic, and I was looking at one of the books in the library and just showing how Sayyid Hussein Nasir was criticizing the Ash'ari position on causality. So I just wanted to ask you about what do you think about Islamic and revivalist thinkers who then try to look for answers from the philosopher Ibn Sina and try to mark and even criticize the Ash'ari school?
I mean, we'd have to look at exactly we'd have to be more specific. But as long as somebody does not criticize that God exists and God is one, everything else in theology we can debate. So it's okay. It's okay to have debates. And the Ash'aris themselves, even though we refer to it as one school, they debate and they argue with each other. So there's nothing wrong with that. But Dr. Nasr is more inclined to advance the arguments of Muslim philosophers, because that's what he's added to the intellectual conversation of Islam, is to revive a lot of the thinking of Muslim philosophers, not just Ibn Sina, but even the more Ishraqi scholars like Mullah Sadr. And no one in the Western world would have known who Mullah Sadr was if it wasn't for Sayyid Hussein Nasr. So that's more of like his madhab, if you think. I studied with him for 5 years. So there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, we might not end up agreeing with the conclusion, but that's okay. We can have a difference of opinion. That would be like a valid difference of opinion. But my experience with that is that oftentimes both parties are saying the same thing, but they're using different language. And that's where it's like when a Taftazani argues against Wahdat al-Wujud. Now, Wahdat al-Wujud is a cornerstone of our spiritual experience. So you say, how can a Taftazani, who is like the Imam of Kalam in Islam, how can he argue against Wahdat al-Wujud? But when you read his criticism, what he thinks Wahdat al-Wujud is pantheism. So everyone would disagree with that. The people that say that Ibn al-Arabi, Sheikh al-Akbar, was a disbeliever. Ibn al-Arabi himself said when he was criticized, what they think I said is disbelief, but that's not what I said. So a lot of times the issue is the words, the terminology that is used. What do we mean by these things? And almost 9 times out of 10, everything can be solved by just agreeing on the term, what these words mean. But show me afterwards, we can look at it.
I was looking for the book, I couldn't find it.
See, Allah doesn't want you to know about it. You're always asking about this high philosophy. So Allah sending you a lesson. Focus on your learning your wudu and praying. See, that's not. I don't even know what book he's talking about. Do you remember the name of the book?
Yeah, it is an Islamic philosophy by Sayyid Hassan Nasr.
He doesn't have a book called Islamic philosophy.
I think Islamic philosophy and mysticism. It's a big red one, and it's in different volumes. One of the volumes is over here, but I can't find it.
Is the other volume here? Philosophy and mysticism. I have all of his books. That doesn't sound like. Okay, we'll find it. If Allah wants you to know.
So, how do we view the Tanzimat, the reforms, and the qualification process in Muslim states?
Read my thesis. It's about codification. I will answer the question. Codification of law, my argument and the argument of many of the contemporary jurists is that it has not only preserved the Sharia but has revived the importance of the Sharia in statecraft. So people like what's his name, Halaqa, he argues that codification or the modern state in general has caused the sterilization of Sharia. I mean, that's like the dumbest thing I've ever heard. It's exactly clearly somebody who has not gone into, opened the hood and looked in the engine, see what's happening. Why are all of these fatwa offices, like in Kuwait, for example, there's a special body. Its job is to review all of the Kuwaiti laws and to see if those laws are compatible with the Sharia. Pakistan has the same thing. Iran has the same thing. In Egypt, it's the constitutional court, Mahkamat al-Sirah. Its job is to accept any criticism of the laws that might violate either the founding principles of the state or the Sharia. So why would we have these mechanisms in all of these Muslim? Look, we're Kuwait, Egypt, Iran, Pakistan, they're all different. So this necessitates that the legislature understand the Sharia. And because the modern lawyers don't know the first thing about Sharia, they have to end up relying on the ulama. Because all of the Sharia courts in most of these countries were closed, except in like Iran and Pakistan. There's Sharia courts in Pakistan, right?
Yes.
Yeah?
Yes.
Yeah, so there's still Sharia court, but in Egypt there's not. In Kuwait it's just the regular courts. So what ends up happening is that you need the ulama now more than you did in the past. So I have all of the journals of the Egyptian Constitutional Court. It's like this big. And when you read the argument, I mean, this is like Imam Shafi'i level ijtihad, arguing why this law is compatible or not compatible with the Sharia. So when people like Halaqa say that Prophet doesn't even know what the constitutional court is in Egypt or where it's located, or doesn't even know that they have a journal that's, with all respect for Halaqa. And people like him, Brinkley Messick says the same thing. So I don't agree with that because I've been in that environment and I see how active the fatwa process is and the ongoing intellectual conversation of the jurists in matters related to the state. There's no shortage of books that talk about what does Islam say about the hudud and what does Islam say about criminal law and what in the Muslim world that are used in the ongoing discussion of these laws. So I believe that codification has been a way to preserve large parts of our Sharia. It's not perfect. Nothing really is. But if you understand it from that point of view, that's what I argue. But there are other people that say the opposite. Rashid Rida, for example, was against it. So when my book is published, inshallah, and I pirate my own book, I will give you a copy. And then you can read it, and then we can have an in-depth conversation. We agreed, right, that I will copyright myself, violate my own copyright. What else?
What will be the equivalent of copyright in Sharia? Right.
Intellectual property. It's considered property. So, property is one of the maqasid of the Sharia, the protection of property. So you can't steal people's logos or a special recipe. These would be all violation of property. But the Sharia is very lax when it comes to knowledge because, well, that's good. We want people to know. But property is property, whether it's intellectual, digital, it's still considered property. I saw a fatwa once. There was a restaurant, a Saudi restaurant, and somebody had stolen their logo and tried to open in Egypt. So the Saudi restaurant, they sent the Mufti of Egypt a question: what is the Sharia ruling on this? And I remember the fatwa, this is haram, and arguing that intellectual property is a form of property, and this is a form of theft. And then that restaurant actually closed down.
So that's actually even in the Western system, it's a very recent phenomenon.
Intellectual property.
Yeah, this came, I think, into the jurisprudence around 20 years ago.
Yeah, it's new and it's serious. I mean, companies commit corporate espionage to steal other people's ideas and intellectual property. It's a big thing. It's patents, and if the patent lapse, it's a big thing. It's a big part of the law. It was a very quiet crowd tonight. We have 25 minutes.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
Did in Sunnah or Sharia or in Quran we heard anything? Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, he prayed without a mama or without head, unless our heart and Umrah. Why we are these days we not using that? It's a Sunnah.
It's the first question, I don't know. Is there a hadith that the Prophet ﷺ prayed without covering his head? I don't know the answer to that. But the fuqaha are of a different opinion over whether a man has to cover his head or not in prayer. The Hanafis, you have to cover your head.
It's a Sunnah.
It's a sunnah, but no, not in the Hanafi, it's more than a sunnah. For all the other madhahib, it's a sunnah. And there's more reward for covering your head. But it doesn't mean it's haram if you don't cover your head.
It's not haram, but we follow Muhammad.
We do, but now all the guys, have these haircut and hair product, and they're trying to look the best for the sisters. I mean, you can't tell them if you tell them you have to cover your hair when you pray, they won't come. It's not going to work. Unless you shave your head. We can put a basket.
Actually, Imam Ali shaved head always.
We can put a basket of topis. And we can put a little sign,
It's not that. You go to any party, you have a nice dress, and you're not following Muhammad, you follow him.
That's right, but it's a sunnah, so we don't want to be also extreme. I mean, if somebody doesn't want to cover their head when they pray.
It's not extreme. We follow without him.
We do, yeah. So my head is covered.
We follow him in everything he did.
But in all honesty, if I wasn't teaching tonight, I probably wouldn't have my head covered. Yeah.
The verse in the Quran says there's no compulsion in religion. The right is the wrong. So there you go.
Is that your way of trying to get out of doing something?
I think every team has.
I can say that, but I don't know, you guys saying that with your parents present, it's very slippery slope. Yes.
I just came to where this Hanafi and Salafi, where did this come from? When we were growing up, I never heard of such a thing. Hanafi and Salafi. What are these? I mean, what does that mean?
Well, they're two different things. There are too many terms. There are too many terms.
Yes. So what?
Just stay with what you grew up with. That's the better Islam.
No, I mean, I find.
Yeah.
But what is it? Why is it from there all this came from?
The Hanafi is a reference to Imam Abu Hanifa al-Nu'mani, the great jurist and qadi of Islam. So he has a whole school of thought of how do we understand the Quran and the Sunnah. So he has certain rules that he uses to understand the Quran and the Sunnah. So most of the people in the subcontinent, most Desis, the Islam they grew up with is the Islam of Imam Abu Hanifa. That's all it means. So, but there are other schools of law. There's the Shafi'i school, the Maliki school, the Hanbali school, etc. So there are other systems that we can use to understand the Quran and the Sunnah. That's what those terms mean. So when somebody asks me a question, I try my best to show if there's a difference of opinion. We respect all the differences of opinion. So I like people to know that there is a difference of opinion, so you can follow whichever opinion is more compatible to your life situation. So that's why I bring it up. Salafi, that's something else. Those are the people that are giving us a hard time. They still haven't matured. That's it. They'll get there, inshallah. Yeah, inshallah. We pray Allah. Nothing is difficult for Allah. They just need to grow up a little bit. That's it. They think it's still the year 670. They just need to know that it's what year is it? 2019.
I wanted to know the law behind women leading the prayer in my house since so long.
Meaning, if women are by themselves, then the women can pray in congregation, and one of the sisters should lead them in prayer. Of course. In some Muslim countries, they have women-only mosques. So. Actually, I think in Los Angeles, or maybe it's Chicago, in the West Coast, I think there's a women's-only masjid, and they get together for Jummah. Of course, there's no Jummah for women, meaning that you don't have to, if it's Friday and you get together for Dhuhr prayer, you don't have to simulate the way we pray Jummah here, because it's not an obligation on women. So if it's on a Friday, maybe a sister will give a lesson because it's Friday, but then you would pray 4 rak'ahs. You can't pray the 2. That's the only difference. Dhuhr, exactly. Because there's no Jummah. The Jummah is something that is for men. We have to come. That doesn't mean that you can't get together on Friday. It doesn't mean that a sister can't, So in our mosque, there's nothing wrong before I begin the Jummah if a sister comes up and gives a lesson. And then after the sister's lesson, I will stand up and I will do the liturgy of the Jummah. And my khutbah can be 2 minutes long, and then we can pray. There's nothing wrong with that. But the leader of the Jummah prayer, as an act of worship, that has to be a man. Okay? So when a man does that, then the man will, after that, will pray 2 rak'ahs. Because that's the package. But when the women get together on Friday, say you don't want the men suck, they always get us in trouble, we want to do it our own self, that's fine, but make sure when you pray 4 rak'ahs. Other than that, everything else is fine.
That question, can women lead men in prayer?
In all of the madhahib, women can't leave men in prayer, except in a unique position by Ibn Arabi, rahimahullah. If all the men are so bad that no one can lead the prayer and only a woman can lead the prayer, and if the congregation accepts it, then the woman can lead the men in prayer from behind. But not forced upon the congregation in the name of liberalism, masked as, extremism. That's not what they say. But no opinion within Islam, under any sect, the old, the new, the east, and the west, allowed a woman to lead Jummah prayer. That does not exist at all. At all. Not one single person said that. But can a woman lead the men in prayer? There's that single opinion. Maybe one day we will need it. So far, I mean, in this mosque, we don't need it. But there might be a community that they need that opinion. So if they agree and they consult with someone and everybody in the mosque agree, then they can do that. Yes.
Can you assign a room in your home as the musalla, and then you get all the good deeds as there's one rather than?
It is. If you designate a place as a musalla, the Prophet ﷺ said the whole earth has been made for me a place to pray. So if you designate a place to pray, you get the reward, sure.
As the same deeds as going to a masjid for a sister?
Yeah, because the sunnah of the woman is to pray at home. It doesn't mean that you can't come to the mosque, but I'm saying from that point of view, to answer your question, yeah, if you look at it that way, yeah, you can get that reward. But come to the mosque. We need you to push back. Oh, these are all softball questions. There's nothing, really juicy we can sink our teeth into. Oh, yeah.
So say it was me and my mom and my younger brother praying together. Is it required that he leaves even if he knows less Quran than us?
No, I mean, especially if you're in a position of teaching. Yeah.
If we say my mom leaves, does he have to stand in front of us?
No, you just be next to each other. Yeah, and it's good to, at home especially, to have women do these different roles so they learn. So like at my house, I let my daughter sometimes say the aqama or say the adhan, so she can learn, because what ends up happening is it's always the men, and then the women are like, actually, I don't know how to make aqama at all. But we don't want that. So it's from the point of view of education, that's actually a good practice. We have 2 more lectures, okay, for the Sirah. Next week, and then 1 more after that. And then we will conclude the Sirah, inshallah. And then we'll figure out something. What? Yeah, fiqh, you can't have fiqh in a public class, because then everyone gets confused. I tried that, we'll see. I tried that one time, it was a mess. Because everyone has a different background here. So, I said, you know what? Just keep it simple. Maybe it's too long. I thought about it, but then I think it would take us like a couple of years. So I think people will get bored. So I'll try to find something like that, but smaller, shorter.
What's the difference, Khilafat and Mulukiyat?
The Khilafah is a reference to the supreme Imam, Imam al-Uzma, which is a separate position than the head of state. We don't have that position anymore. We don't have a Khalifa anymore. The last Khalifa was the Ottoman Caliphate that was abolished in the 1920s. So that position is gone. And the Prophet ﷺ told us when that position is gone, he didn't instruct us to bring it back. He said, when that position is gone, then hold on to the leader of the community, meaning whatever, your state, your government, your nation. The Imam al-Uzma, the supreme Imam, i.e. the Khalifa, there are certain rules about that position that do not apply to the position of the head of state. So the Khalifa has to be a man, but the head of state doesn't have to be a man. Because the Khalifa is a direct representative of the political leadership of the Prophet ﷺ. And part of that is that the Khalifa has to lead the Friday prayer, where the Khalifa is. So because of what we just said a little while ago, the Khalifa would not be a position. One of the positions is the man. Other positions, they're not blind. Third position criteria is that they have some physical strength, a certain amount of physical strength. Fourth is that they are from the family of the Prophet, etc. Those conditions only apply to that, the Khilafah. As far as the head of state, it's different. The head of state can be a man, can be a woman, just like a Qadi can be a man or can be a woman. Mufti can be a man or woman, etc.
So why Hitler abused Sufyan's children. Why they against to go Ali?
Because they wanted Imam Ali to go after the assassins of Sayyidina Uthman right away. And Imam Ali, who was right, he said, well, we just had 2 Khalifas that were assassinated. The people that assassinated them are not Arabs, meaning they're not from this community. We don't know who they are. We have a national security crisis. So I have to make sure that the nation doesn't fall. And then, of course, we will go find the assassins of Uthman. How would we not find the assassins of Sayyidina Uthman? So Muawiyah didn't send his allegiance, the mubay'ah, to Imam Ali because of this issue. So Imam Ali says it's not a joke. We're not in kindergarten. This is serious. So that's when he went with the army to go meet him, see what's going on. The night that they camped, those same people that assassinated Sayyidina Uthman, they infiltrated both armies and they started killing on both sides. So both sides thought that the other side had attacked, and that's how the battle happened.
So who was right?
Imam Ali. The Prophet ﷺ said, "Al-haqqu ma'ali ayyama dar." The truth is with Ali wherever he goes. أنا مدينة العلم وعلي بابها. I am the city of knowledge and Ali is its door. The Prophet ﷺ also said, "An-nadhar ila Ali ibadah." Looking at Imam Ali is an act of worship. So we believe that Imam Ali was wrong and Sayyidina Muawiyah Imam Ali was right and Sayyidina Muawiyah was wrong. Without doubt.
And at the victory of the victory over the Romans, at Tabuk, did our Prophet peace be upon him, did he deliver a sermon? And what was that?
Did the Prophet deliver a sermon?
Did he deliver a sermon at Tabuk after the victory over the
Yes, yeah.
What was that sermon?
His sermon was to encourage the people that they are about to fight, to be strong, to be steadfast, to encourage the troops because they are about to engage in battle, or they thought they were going to engage in battle.
After the victory.
After the victory, they came back.
Was there a sermon?
Specifically, I don't know.
The sermon of the new state given to the Prophet. Because the new state was born.
No, because the Arab tribes gave their allegiance to the Prophet ﷺ, so they joined with the Muslim state. So I don't know specifically if there was maybe there was, I don't know, because they were there for 2 weeks. So I'm sure there must have been. Yeah, I didn't come across that.
Because some say that sermon was the first democratic sermon of Islam. They were gathered all, and when he gathered speak, somebody stood up, he said, I'm a Jew. And the person stood up, he said, I'm a Christian. Then our Prophet peace be upon him said, no, you are first a citizen. Then you are a Christian or a Muslim. First you are a citizen of this state.
Okay, let me look at that. I didn't come across that.
When the Prophet ﷺ prayed janazah on King Najas, did that indicate that Najas is a Muslim?
Yeah, and Najashi became Muslim. That Najashi, not because Najashi is just like a title. Negus. It's the title of the emperor of the empire of Aksum. So there was a Negus after him. But that Najashi, I can't remember his exact name, he was a Muslim. And there's a mosque, he's buried, and there's a mosque that was built over his tomb in northern Ethiopia. You can go to it today.
I saw it 2 years ago.
You went there?
No, I saw it on Twitter.
Oh, Twitter. Man, you got me excited. Yeah.
And where did the Shia get their hadith?
The Shia get their hadith from certain Sahaba, not all of the Sahaba the way we get our hadith. So the Sahaba that were with Imam Ali and obviously the Sahaba that were the family of the Prophet ﷺ, the Ahlul Bayt. So our hadith corpus is like this and the Shia hadith corpus is like this. It's just a little bit smaller. It's more limited in the people that they accept the narrations from. And there's a project, I think, that just came out of Iran in which they compiled like a hadith encyclopedia of all of the hadith that the Sunnis and the Shia agree on. Which would be great if we can get our hands on that. But that would be a great resource. So there's many that overlap. But why is there differences in how we pray? It comes from this issue. It comes from how the fiqh is developed, because obviously the Quran is the Quran, but the sources of hadith are different. Not different, more limited. Our approach to hadith is all of the Sahaba are equal in their ability to transmit religion. So we accept the narration of all of the Sahaba that transmitted, which were about like a couple thousand. So they would have like less than that. I don't know the exact number. That's really it.
Did at any time the prophets prayed like how we share pray?
Well, it depends who you ask. Of course. But the prayer is the same, really, with just a few differences. The main differences are that the prayer for them is all out loud. They have dua in the last rak'ah instead of the Quranic recitation. And then in the last tashahhud, they don't do salam, they have the takbir to get out of the prayer. But other than that, 90% of the prayer is the same. And the things that we differ with them on, if you did talfiq and you took from the different Sunni schools, you could say barely, but that would be compatible with the Sunni prayer. I mean, it would be a tough fit, but it's like when you overeat in Thanksgiving and then you put on your clothes, it would be like that, like an uncomfortable fit. So in the situation in which we are together and where you have to pray behind the Shia, you should pray behind the Shia.
What about the wudu of Shia?
The wudu is a little different, I think, with the feet.
Yeah.
They do masah all the time, right? They don't wash?
No.
At all?
No, they wash.
No,
I've seen it. I've seen it in here. They wash.
Yeah, but they wash and then later they do masah? Or?
No, I had my classmates were Shias. They were washing their feet unless they were doing the wudu.
Yeah, you're right. Masa.
Don't they wash their feet at least once and then they do masah for the rest of the day?
Not in wudu. They wash without wudu.
Okay.
Not mixing.
I mean, look, if we wanted to find differences, we would find a lot of different. I'm trying to be.
No, the question is,
Mr.
when the
Coexist.
wudu is not complete, according to our,
Yeah, but it's complete according to their method.
according to their method.
Yeah.
But that is not a full wudu.
It's not a full wudu for us. So the question is, do we accept their madhab or not? As a madhab.
We can pray behind them.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to say. So
Even
if you feel uncomfortable, then after you pray behind them, make up the prayer on your own when you go home. That's probably what I would do, just to be on the safe side. Because it's very rare that a Sunni will pray behind a Shia. The more common thing is that the Shia pray behind the Sunni.
We were being
I
praying
had
after.
a friend very fast when he was a Shia. I went to his home and was studying. He took wudu. The same way I did it, he did it.
Yeah, but he's right. There's a difference, though, the message. But I mean, if we wanted to find differences, we would find. I mean, we know that there are differences, and Sunnis and Shias have been fighting for so long. But now we want to try to.
Their sheikh was doing the wudu like us, and he was encouraging other students, Sheikh Asif Mohsini, and he was encouraging the students to do the complete wudu. It means wash all feet and hands. And we were praying after the sheikh, when the sheikh wasn't there.
They would do the message.
Yeah, they were doing the masa and.
Okay, I don't know. I'll have to ask my Shia friends, or I can look it up. Auntie, you had something?
Yeah, I just, since we're talking about Shia and Sunni, one thing I have not been able to understand, that Hazrat Aisha Islam was, most loved wife of Muhammad Prophet. And as we were just saying, that Hazrat Ali was very close to Muhammad, and he adored him and all that. How come then Hazrat Aisha, there was a clash between Hazrat Ali and Hazrat Aisha?
It depends how you understand the story. The Shia, or some of the Shia will understand the story that Sayyidah Aisha went out against Imam Ali. But that's not our reading of the story. Our reading of the story is that Sayyidah Aisha went out to stop the fighting between Imam Ali and Muawiyah because she is the mother of all of us. She's al-Mu'mineen. So when she goes and they see that she's there, everyone will be too embarrassed to do anything. That's our understanding. Not that she went out against Imam Ali, but that she went out for that reason. So, that no matter what we say, we will never erase the difference. There's always going to be Sunni and Shia. It's beyond our capacity to do that. But what we need to do is we need to also, first of all, always try to build on that which is between us and to dispel any misunderstanding about the Sahaba or about the family of the Prophet ﷺ, because a lot of the Shia, they simply believe the wrong thing about us. And most Sunnis simply believe the wrong things about the Shia. And they have the same problem. They have these akhbaris and stuff like that curse the Sahaba and some of the Sahaba, and this is a disaster. And all of the major ayatollahs, they said that this is not permissible. You can't curse the Sahaba. They might take criticism of some of the actions of some of the Sahaba, but the major maraja of the Shia, they say you can't curse the companions. So they have a lot of work and we also have a lot of work. But to think that we will erase, like one of the Shia people at the school, I was talking with the school one day about Ahlul Bayt, and he's like, oh, mashallah, I heard what you said about Ahlul Bayt. He said, I don't understand, why don't you become Shia? So we have to erase this mentality. So that's not you don't give me dawah, I won't give you dawah, let's just build together on what we agree. That's really, we're just going to disagree on those things. But it's important that when this comes up, we say, no, Sayyidah Aisha, alayhi salam, she didn't go out to against the Sahaba, she went to stop the potential bloodshed. That's how we understand it. Okay, last.
How true is how many marriages Imam said that?
How true is what?
How many marriages he did, like extra or 100 or 20 or something?
Who?
Imam said.
Imam Hassan.
Yeah.
Imam Hassan was mizwaj. He married a lot because all of the tribes wanted to have nasab with the Prophet ﷺ. So every time he would go somewhere, they would make him marry somebody from their tribe. And then he would divorce.
Like 100 something.
Yeah. And as a matter of fact, somebody came to Imam Ali, I believe, alayhi salam, inquiring about marriage of Imam Hassan. He said, no, don't marry Al-Hassan because he marries too much. So this happened, but not for the reason that not because he was like Mr. Slick and he was like a womanizer. That's not why. He did it because they wanted to have some relationship with the family of the Prophet.
So that's what they found in the Muta. Is that what the Muta is doing?
No, the Muta is different. You're going to take us down your kids' play. You save this juicy stuff at the very end. Muta.
What is the significance of the clay Shia use when they go on sujood?
The Shia have to make sujood on the earth, nothing that's fabricated. So people, again, Sunnis, they misunderstand. They think that they're praying on like the grave of a member. It's all this nonsense that Sunnis say.
But is it from?
No, anything, anything that's earth. So if we had a straw mat mosque, they would come and they would pray normally. Sometimes they have a rug, and in the place of sujood, they just have like a little line of earth, or a napkin, something that has not been processed. Or a stone, yeah, but it's not because it's a stone, because it's earth. Meaning they have to make sujood on something that's natural, that has not been processed outside of its natural element. For us, that's a sunnah. It's a sunnah to pray on the earth, but not wajib. I mean, obviously we have the carpets and stuff like that. That's where it comes from.
What they use is from certain part of.
No. That's like the ignorant Shia say that. This is a piece of Karbala. No, that's not why you pray on it. Dum-dum, you pray on it because in your madhab you have to pray on the earth. They have dum-dums and we have dum-dums too.
He's right. Shia bring from Karbala.
Okay, maybe they bring a piece, but they're not making. But that's not why they're making sujood on it. They're making like if I had a prayer mat that was cut from the prayer mat of the Rawda in Medina, man, I would take that with me everywhere I go.
We don't live that, but they live that.
No. I'm talking about something you have to. There are two issues in the Sharia. There's something called and jiha munfakka, that this issue is bifurcated. There are two separate issues. I went to Medina and somebody gave me a gift, a piece of the carpet that's in the Rawda of the Mosque of the Prophet ﷺ. The stick that I had today in Jum'ah, this stick I took to the Rawda. So I always say this stick has been to paradise. It's my favorite stick. It's just something that it's just something silly between me and myself. If I had that rug and everywhere I went, I put it out to pray on it, it's the same thing when a Shia takes a piece of stone that's from Karbala because it's sentimental value. But why do they take it and they make sujood on it? It's for a separate issue. Because in their fiqh, you have to make sure your head has to touch the ground on earth, not on something that is fabricated. So there are two separate issues. Please understand, we have to be, yes. How? After the death of the Prophet ﷺ, during the Khilafah of Imam Ali. He was the fourth Khalifa. So several decades later, there was this conflict because the third Khalifa was assassinated, Sayyidina Uthman, while he was praying. And that's where the tension started to happen between Imam Ali and Muawiyah. And from this tension, there emerged these two different groups, the Sunnis and the Shias.
Cut it off.
Last one.
Yeah, okay, last one.
Why all Ummah have a different Rafa there?
Different one?
Rafa there.
Rafal Yadayn.
Yeah, but the Ibadis, they don't. The Ibadis of Oman, they don't do Raf al Yadayn. The Sunni schools we do. But Raf al Yadayn is Sunnah. What's wajib is to say Allahu Akbar when you enter the prayer.
Yes.
See?
But a lot of, listen, as a Sunni, we do one Allahu Akbar that.
Yeah.
But in Arab country, you see every rakah Allah.
Because that's the Shafi'i.